Hey everyone, welcome to this week's Deck Tech. If you're liking what you see here on YouTube, go ahead and hit subscribe, or you know what? Just smash the hell out of that bell down there, and then it'll tell you every time we release something new. That would be really, really fun. Okay, well, let's get to it. This week's Deck Tech brought to you by Boros.
Oh yeah, so it's GRN is upon us, Guilds of Ravnica.
Not just green, which I always think it is.
Green.
Green.
Oh, now I want to think of what other colors could be. Red. Imagine they make a set that's just red.
R-E-D. Yeah. I don't know.
I don't know either.
Rings. Anyway. I was going to say around Edron. Anyways.
Eldrazi.
There you go. Yep.
Return of Eldrazi dominance.
Red. Okay, that will be very confusing. But anyways.
GRN, green. We're going to do a commander that has no green in it. We're building around Tajic, Legion's Edge. Tajic is the Boros guild leader of the guild. And
he was the maze runner.
Oh, right. That's different than the guild leader, right?
Yeah, Relly is the guild leader. I don't know so much about the story, but I think that's the way it is.
Tajic is a legendary. He's a super cool dude. His sword has at least 3 flamethrowers on it.
Yeah, that's right.
There could be more. I don't know how tall that sword goes.
But yeah, I bet you that's a pretty tall sword, yeah.
Yeah, right? Like, is there like a gas canister in there somewhere? I don't know.
Gotta be. Maybe it's under all... Maybe he wears it on his shoulder under that fur.
Is that fur or just light?
Looks like fur to me.
Okay. Anyway, what does Tajic do? Tajic is a 3-mana 3/2. 1 red, white for a 3/2 legendary human soldier. Tajic has haste and mentor, so whenever Tajic attacks, you get to put a +1/+1 counter on any attacking creature with lesser power. And you can prevent... Well, here's just a thing that Tajic does, and this is what we're building around. Prevent all non-combat damage that would be dealt to other creatures you control. Red-white... Tajic Legion's Edge gains first strike until end of turn. Really, we don't really care about Mentor very much. We don't care very much about giving him first strike, but we really care about that other ability, and that's kind of the whole point of the deck is around. Andy, what are we doing with this?
Well, if you listen to the set review and you heard us talk about Tajic, you kind of know what we're going to do, because this was the part of, like, when we spoke about this card, this was the part that we were excited about, and it was Sean's idea, where he was like, oh, like maybe you could do like an earthquake tribal type of thing. And that is basically, yeah, that's kind of what we did here. We said, you know what? What if you like run a bunch of spells that kill everything, you know, red damage spells that go ahead and deal damage to all creatures and everything. But Tajic just stops that from happening to your creatures, so they all become like one-sided damage-based board wipes. And so that's what we did. That's what we built around. We're going to be looking at killing everybody but us, which is kind of the general thing you want to do in Magic anyways, right?
Yeah, right? I mean, everyone has a hard time on Boros. Everyone rags on Boros because they can't draw cards very well. They can't ramp very well. That's fine, but we can hit really hard, and we're going to make sure that you've got no creatures on the battlefield to block with. That's the goal here.
Yeah, and like this deck is fun because just getting a little bit ahead of myself here, but this deck is fun because it doesn't only rely on attacking, like is the knock against Boros, right? You can win games without even a single attack in this deck for sure.
True.
But also there are some neat things that will happen when we attack and that sort of thing. So let's get right into it here. So we got Tajic, we know we got the Legion's Edge here, but how are the ways that we're going to kill everything except for our own stuff, right? Well, Tajic's going to protect against all non-combat damage, which is kind of a reason you don't want to attack really with this deck.
Yeah.
But we're going to run stuff like Blasphemous Act, which is the 8 in a red, but it costs 1 less for each creature on the battlefield. And what it does is a sorcery that deals 13 damage to each creature. So this is a classic red board wipe for Commander. And it's damage based, which is usually a downside, but for us this is a huge upside because Tajic's going to protect all our other creatures from this board wipe, and most of our opponent's creatures, probably all of them, are going to die from this, which is great.
Yep. We're also running a great one called Chandra's Ignition. I love this one. 3 red for a sorcery. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to each other creature and each opponent. So one thing we didn't point out about Tajic is that Tajic doesn't prevent the non-combat damage from himself.
Right.
So if you use Chandra's Ignition on Tajic, then you'll do 3 damage to each other creature on the board, but your own creatures don't care about it. So you'll end up eliminating a lot of creatures, and you'll do a lot of damage to your opponents this way. Of course, we have some creatures with much bigger power, so that is the creature we would likely cast this targeting, but this can do some serious damage and can win games.
Yeah, and of course we have the sort of catalyst for the whole thing in Earthquake. Just the classic X and a red for a sorcery that says Earthquake deals X damage to each creature without flying and each player. You'll see a lot of the deals damage to creatures without flying. That's a real red thing. But there's also a couple things that will then alternately do damage just to flyers to sort of shore that up for you. So there are ways to actually hit flyers as well. Scourge of Care Ridges, I don't think we talk about it in the show notes here, but it's a good one. And there's some other stuff that can do it. So fear not, we're not only hitting stuff on the ground. We're doing it to mostly everyone. But Earthquake is really great because it also hits players. And as you'll see in a bit, we've got some neat ways to deal with that.
Oh, yeah. Andy said no fear earlier. If you have any fear in your heart, Boros is not the the guild for you.
Yeah, no fear. Boros is the home of the no fear t-shirt.
Yeah, that's Boros. Okay. We'll debate what guild that t-shirt brand belongs in.
I think it's got to be Boros.
I mean, I think there's a case for Rakdos, maybe.
That's true. Yeah. No fear seems a bit reckless to me, whereas Boros seems like they plan out their strategies a bit more.
Oh, very organized.
Yeah, very organized. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so as we mentioned, Tajic can't protect himself. Tajic doesn't protect himself from non-combat damage. So we've got to do that too. So how about...
We got to protect Tajic in a variety of ways, right?
In a variety of ways. So the main way to protect him is with Swiftfoot Boots. Obviously, this is a commander staple. 2 generic for an artifact. And you equip for 1. Equipped creature has hexproof and haste. He already has haste. We don't care about that, but it's the hexproof. What we don't want to have happen is to put a big earthquake on the stack, and then someone goes, okay, kill Tajic in response, and now all your creatures are vulnerable to this earthquake, and you are counting on having them stick around. So that's what Swiftfoot Boots is in here for. Exactly.
But there's other ways to protect, especially from our own stuff like... that's spoiler alert. Indestructibility. There we go. That's the one I wanted. Indestructibility is the aura that's 3 and a white. You can enchant a permanent. You can enchant anything with this aura, which I always forget about.
I always forget that. Yeah, that's so interesting.
Yeah, this gives it to any permanent. So, but anyways, we're definitely going to be targeting our Tajic here, and it just gives that permanent indestructible. So can't be destroyed. And all that good stuff. So it's kind of funny though, the original Tajic from Dragon's Maze had indestructibility. It was indestructible. And the new Tajic doesn't. So somewhere in between. Cheap. Oh, I agree. I agree that would have been too powerful, I think. But how did he lose that ability between the stories? You know what I mean?
Maybe he's getting a little older.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Those his brittle bones can now be broken.
Oh, and that's why he's overcompensating with this ridiculous outfit.
With the flamethrower sword and the crazy helmet. Yeah, and all the fur.
Yeah. Another way we're going to protect Tajic from all our earthquakes and things is Darksteel Plate. It's a 3 generic artifact equipment. The equipment itself is indestructible, and equipped creature has indestructible. It equips for 2. A lot of the same deal.
Yeah, a lot of the same deal. This one's great. It's a little harder to... Well, actually, depending on what you do. But Darksteel Plate's usually one we haven't talked about on the show in a very long time, because it's about... it was even more than $5, but I think it's recently probably dropped a little bit in price, it feels like.
Yeah, it was reprinted in a dual deck.
There you go. So Darksteel Plate is now up for grabs for some budget players, and it's a great one because you can move it around to different things, and it makes that if you draw this while you have indestructibility, the aura, you can just put this on something else and wait until they deal with that aura. Nice. Great. Okay. So, but we also, like I said, we're running earthquakes, we're running effects like that. So a lot of damage is going to come at players as well, actually, in this deck. So we do need a couple of ways to protect against our own big X spells that are going to hit players. And one of, Sean, actually, you thought of Circle of Protection, red,
Right.
which is a
right.
classic Magic spell. But like at some point they sort of functionally reprinted these that are slightly better, I think, for especially for Commander. So we actually have a Rune of Protection. So the Rune of Protection red is 1 and a white for an enchantment. You have to pay 1 white to prevent all damage to you from a red source. And it has cycling too. So that's where that comes in. Cycling 2 is nice in case for some reason this is not a relevant card. You can just cycle that away. The Circle of Protection is the same card without cycling, and it's pay 1 colorless to prevent all damage to you from a red source. But for us, we've got enough, our mana base is fine. I think we're going to be, if you cast this, you have a white, mana there at least. So you've got that going. So, this is a little bit better because of the cycling mostly.
Yeah, and as I said, so it just occurs to me we don't have a spot in the notes to talk about this, but while we're doing all these earthquakes and things like that, we have a few effects that double damage. So we're not just doing 8 damage to all creatures and players. We'll be doing 16 to all creatures and players. So we don't want to kill ourselves that way. So this is why Rune of Protection is in here, because we want to protect ourselves from that damage.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, we do have some. Yeah, we do talk about the doubling a little bit down there. So,
do we? Good.
Yeah, we'll get to
good.
it. But yeah, definitely we want to
great.
protect ourselves against all the damage that we're going to do, which is a lot.
Another interesting way to protect ourselves. It doesn't work in every case of what we're doing, but it works almost all the time, is Personal Sanctuary. 2 and a white enchantment. During your turn, prevent all damage that would be dealt to you. This is a very interesting card. I think I would like to dig deeper with this and see what other decks that tend to hurt themselves can do with this.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a great way because, Earthquake is a sorcery. A lot of these spells are sorcery anyway, so we will be casting them on our turn, and that just prevents the damage to us. Sweet deal.
Yeah, sweet deal. Personal Sanctuary actually I think is going to be quite good in this deck. It's a weird card because normally in Magic your turn is no one's dealing damage to you on your turn. So you don't even imagine you were playing an M12 limited and this was your one of your rares. Woof. No thanks.
Well, you know what? I mean, I think they're modern playable now, but I think all the ley lines came out in M12 too, and I think that's where they introduced Titans as well, and so right now Leyline of Sanctity is worth $30 because it's in a modern deck, but at the time it's just this is a useless card, and they were a gumball forever. Man, I should have stocked up.
I mean, how are you gonna know? But anyways,
I could not have known.
Personal Sanctuary works in this deck quite nicely because like you said, a lot of sorceries are gonna do a lot of damage to us. So that's what we want to do. Line up a bunch of big X damage spells, things that are going to clear board wipe, essentially, our opponent's side of things, while Tajic protects us and we protect him. So knowing that's kind of what we're looking to do, let's take a look at some neat moves.
Working on a neat move.
All right, so we're back. And our first neat move, this is a card. I feel like this is a bit of a pet card of mine. I really like this. Every time this deck or this card seems viable in a deck, I work hard to make it work. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay.
And I've done it for a real life deck before, and I'm happy to do it here. It's Hostility. 3 and 3 red for the creature. It's an elemental incarnation. It's a 6/6 with haste, and it says if a spell you control would deal damage to an opponent, prevent that damage, create a 3/1 red elemental shaman creature token with haste for each 1 damage prevented this way. And then when hostility is put in the graveyard from anywhere, you shuffle it into your library. So so you cast a big earthquake, you get rid of all their creatures. Tajic protects whatever creatures you have, especially hostility. And in doing that big X spell, you've dealt, let's say, 6-7 damage to your opponent as well. Well, that's more than one opponent you have. You have probably 3 opponents, let's say, in a 4-player game. So let's say it was 6, right? You cast an earthquake for X equals 6. That's 6, 6, and 6 damage prevented for each of your opponent with hostility. So that's 18 3/1s that you now make after probably wiping the board. You might leave, one or two bigger creatures around. But now Hostility has given you 18 3/1s. And now you just get in with those, and you've just essentially cast 3 times the amount of damage on your opponents because they all have haste. That's
wow,
real good. Now that's a little good. Like that's, obviously that's pretty. We gotta have our commander. We gotta have Hostility. We probably gotta have something to protect our commander too. But that's the whole thing of what we're trying to do in this deck.
Well, but you know what I would suggest? I would say we don't need our commander for the Hostility plan. I'll drop an Earthquake for 10 without Tajic, lose my whole team, but have 33 ones to fling at my opponents.
That's true. And then, Hostility goes into your library after that.
Yeah, right?
Which, we're not running any recursion or anything, so, it's actually kind of better.
I ask you, is there still a game after that move? Does that move end the game?
That's true. That move a lot of times ends the game, especially if it's a later game move. I don't care if
Tajic goes down.
It's true. Yeah, you're right. Absolutely. So yeah, Hostility is just this arguably could have made the 3 stars, I think, but
I think so.
This
it's
card's
the neatest move, though. We wanted it.
It's the neatest move. What's another neat move?
Oh, this neat move too. Okay, so we're protecting ourselves with a lot of ways. So we have that circle of protection or the rune of protection. We got that stuff, but there are times where we won't have that, and in that case, Darian, King of Keldor, becomes amazing. 4 white, legendary human soldier, 3/3. Whenever you're dealt damage, you may create that many 1/1 white soldier creature tokens. So we drop an Earthquake. Earthquake is our staple go-to. There's lots of effects that do that. We keep saying Earthquake, but there's a numerous spells that do that same effect, that damage creatures and players. So everyone's going to take 7. We're also going to take 7. Most of our opponent's creatures are going to die, but we're also going to get 7 1/1s ready to just keep working for us in future turns.
Exactly, yep. Darian's great. Known as a commander around these parts. I've got him on a white deck with him as the leader, so it's fun to see him in the 99 or something because he works just as well. It's great.
Yeah.
So talking about that kind of damage and actually kind of a non-bow with Darian is Palisade Giant. 4 white for a 2/7 giant soldier that says all damage that would be dealt to you or another permanent you control is dealt to Palisade Giant instead. Well, here's the beauty part of Palisade Giant and Tajic is that if all that damage that would be dealt to you is now dealt to Palisade Giant instead, but then Tajic prevents the non-combat damage that's dealt to creatures. So now you're not taking any damage as long as you have a Palisade Giant out. And if you have Tajic as well, Palisade Giant is also not taking damage.
Yeah.
Right? That's the neat move there. That's the whole that's the neat move.
So Palisade Giant by himself protects Tajic.
Palisade Giant protects you, the player.
And another permanent you control, which counts as Tajic.
Oh my god, it is another permanent you control. I read that part and then didn't even register it at all.
So Palisade Giant makes sure that Tajic won't take any damage. And Tajic makes sure that Palisade Giant doesn't care about the damage.
Yeah, that is a neat move if I've ever heard one. That's a very neat move. Now people are going to be gunning for this creature when you get it out with Tajic because as you'll find out, people don't like it when they can't deal damage to you.
People hate that.
They hate that.
They hate
and even if, and I've noticed this too in games, because like I said, I have Darian deck, right? So a lot of times in that deck, now all of a sudden, dealing damage to me is helping my strategy. So they essentially can't deal damage to me. They don't want to.
Yeah.
But all I need to do is wait patiently and get rid of that creature and then do something. But most people won't do that. They'll expend resources hard to get rid of cards like this, so they become a bit of a lightning rod, which in itself is actually a good thing as well, because Palisade Giant being down is an amazing move for us. We're very happy to have it, obviously, but it's not the end of the world if they expend some really good removal spell to get rid of your Palisade Giant. It's actually not that bad.
Also, with Tajic on the battlefield, lightning rods attract as much lightning as they want. They don't care.
Well, damage-based lightning rods. Right, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You want to bolt it for 3? Go ahead.
Never really an option in Commander, let's be honest. But yes.
Yeah. Great. Here's another neat move. Flickering Ward. It's a white mana for an aura. It enchants a creature. As Flickering Ward enters the battlefield, choose a color. We're probably going to choose red. Enchanted creature has protection from the chosen color. This effect doesn't remove Flickering Ward. They put that on there in case you name white, otherwise it would knock itself off.
Yeah.
But that is a way to protect Tajic from red. All of our damage-based spells are in red, so now Tajic no longer takes damage from them. But here's the cool part. White, return Flickering Ward to its owner's hand. If our opponents are going to deal with Tajic, we can save this enchantment and get it back for future effects. And let's not forget, there might be a world where, I'm just going to put this on one of my big creatures, give it protection from green, and attack the mono green player for unblockable damage. Like, that's a move we could do too with it. Like, this is a very flexible and neat card.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, this is definitely one of the best ways to protect Tajic from ourselves. And then, probably once in a while, actually, does some work to protect against our opponents too. Like, if there's a lot of black removal spells, for example, if you got one of the other ways to stop the red damage or something, like you got a Palisade Giant out, Flickering Ward's not a bad idea to come down and help protect your commander. And I'll always save a white to remove it, to return it back in hand, just in case.
And then your opponents think it's a Swords to Plowshares.
Yeah, there you go. You bluffed them. Next, we have Fire Servant. This is one of the cards we're talking about that doubles some damage. So Fire Servant's a creature. It's a 4/3. It's 3 and 2 red for an elemental. And it says, if a red instant or sorcery spell you control would deal damage, it deals double that damage instead. So this is, again, one of our damage doublers. This will only deal damage from, like it says, instant or sorcery spells, which is most of the damage we're looking to deal anyways. That's why I was saying, like, combat isn't as important. This is really mostly about those big X spells and those dealing damage to everyone's spells. Fire Servant's going to double that up. Obviously, that doesn't affect our creatures, so we're going to be safe from it. There's other stuff in here too. We have like Dictate of the Twin Gods, and I think one of the quest ones is in here too. So you can you don't want to overload on these because they. I think like there is diminishing returns. Like the first one's great, the second one's really great, and then like the third one is overkill. You don't really need to like 6 times the damage. It's not once you like even 2 times the damage can be like enough to win the game in this deck. And 4 you could even argue is or like 4 times the damage is a kind of overkill. But anyways, they're definitely good to have, and you definitely want a couple in here. And Fire Servant is a fun one.
Oh, fun. Let's go on to Living Inferno. This is a neat move. This works well with Tajic. It's an expensive creature. It's an elemental, 6 red, 8 mana total for an 8/5. But here's what it does. Tap. Living Inferno deals damage equal to its power, divided as you choose among any number of target creatures. Each of those creatures deals damage equal to its power to Living Inferno. Guess what? That ain't going to kill Living Inferno.
Yeah, that's right.
So we have the ability to kind of spot remove 8 toughness worth of creatures at a time. Living Inferno also attacks very well after we've cleared the board. But yeah, and this is really good after we've done our plan, we've done an Earthquake, and we've like finished off a player, but someone else is starting to rebuild. We don't have another Earthquake in our hand. Maybe we held Living Inferno back to just do something on their end step. It becomes a really tough way for other people to keep rebuilding.
Yeah, and it can also finish off those last points of damage for like if your Earthquake, dealt 7 and then they have like a 9 toughness creature or something, right? You can Living Inferno them for that extra 2 and then spread it around to maybe some other big guys. So I think this card is, despite its really heavy mana cost, is actually very good in the deck still. And this is the one, like the lone survivor of when we first put this deck together. We had a couple different like fight-ish cards in there. Because fight is another thing that Tajic prevents, right? Like that's non-combat damage. So, but they all eventually got cut because they're not great in Commander really. But Living Inferno is like the effect of this card is big enough that we kept it in. I like it a lot.
Oh yeah, what's the next neat move?
Very neat move. This is a classic neat move. We got Reverberate here, so that's the 2 red instant that says copy target instant or sorcery spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. So this is going to deal double duty. It's going to occasionally copy one of our own instant or sorcery spells, so one of our big Earthquakes, for example, stuff like that. But also this serves as a counterspell to a counterspell. We've mentioned this on the show before. I learned this from Command Zone. Josh and Jimmy, they mentioned this very early on in their shows. But Reverberate is a way for usually a mono red deck, or like a Boros deck or something, to deal with your spell being countered. You can, most of the time, reverberate a counterspell to counter the original. I mean, obviously you can't counter one that's like an Essence Scatter or something like that, but a negate, a regular counterspell, you're good. So yeah, it deals double duty, and I think you're mostly going to use it to copy one of your own big damage spells, but it has, in a pinch, you can protect yourself against that blue player. Neat move.
Here's a sneaky little neat move. Humble Defector. Boros decks have a hard time drawing cards. This is a creature. It's a human rogue. It's 1 in a red for a 2/1. And it's a very political card because you can tap it, draw 2 cards. Target opponent gains control of Humble Defector. Activate this ability only during your turn. So we're going to tap Humble Defector to draw 2 cards, which is very great in Boros, but we're going to have to give it to an opponent. Maybe we'll strike a deal so that they're going to tap it and give it back to us. That's fine. But if that's not the deal, we can do that and then Earthquake so that the Humble Effector will die on their side of the board and no one else gets the benefit. Is that a lot of work for 2 cards? Yes, but it's a neat move nonetheless.
It sure is a neat move. Yeah, get political with this card. It's fun. I'll never forget the time when, Sean, you had a Humble Defector out and you passed it around the table, because everyone was like, hey, yeah, sure, I'll give it back to you. And then I took it and sacrificed it.
Rude. The rudest.
I just said I wanted to draw 2 cards. I really did. Okay, next we have Wildfire. This is a maybe a bit of a controversial card depending on who you're playing with, but Wildfire is a 6 mana sorcery, so 4 and 2 red. It says each player sacrifices 4 lands, and then Wildfire deals 4 damage to each creature. Yeah, this is going to be... Actually, I was thinking about this card at first, and I was like, I think this might be hard on us because we don't ramp very well. We're Boros, right? But we do have a lot of artifact ramp in here. We've got a lot of mana rocks, so sacrificing lands might not be as bad as it sounds. Plus, if everyone's sacrificing 4 lands, hopefully that will slow them down enough so that now we've dealt 4 damage to everything. Maybe we've even doubled that up, so now we can get in with our creatures and they have a harder time rebuilding after that, whereas we've got all these creatures still up because none of our creatures took any damage, right? So that's the idea behind these types of spells. I think it's going to end up being a little bit of a wash against green decks, I will say. Sure. I think them sacrificing 4 lands is going to have a smaller effect on them than it does on us, and dealing 4 damage to all their creatures might not be as relevant either. So you might have to deal with, you might have to find another way to deal with those like big green decks. But I think for the most part, on average, you're going to find this card to be pretty good.
You know what we didn't talk about while we were putting this deck together?
What's that?
Is it, so for 5 mana, we would be able to Blasphemous Act for a single red and eliminate everybody's board but ours.
Probably,
and then
yeah.
Probably, right? If all goes according to plan, and I expect it to. Then for an additional 4 mana, we can Armageddon and just destroy all lands. So no one can rebuild, and we've got the only board on the table, and just turn by turn eliminate everybody.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
Yeah, the turns were... Yeah, you know what? I think it is in this deck. I think it's reasonable just because, like you said, we have so many ways to wipe the board potentially that, like, if we get set up, you just hit one of your big you hit one of your earthquakes and then you Armageddon. So it might be really good.
I don't know, man.
And then especially because we'll have probably more mana rocks out than the average deck. Hopefully, because we got a lot of them in here, so
yeah,
we can still recover from that. That might be a real move. We didn't put it in the deck, but
is that a neat move?
That might be a bit of a neat move. Yeah. Well, if I'll tell you what, if Wildfire is a neat move, Wildfire is kind of like half and half. Yeah. Right? So if you both, it might be worth a look for an Armageddon. Yeah.
Yeah.
Why not? I don't again, like we've said this many times, but I don't hate mass land destruction. As long as you do it at the time when it makes sense that you're going to win, hopefully, right? Like,
yeah, don't just do it to like cheese the table.
Yeah, that's no good. Don't just do it to like set everyone back, including yourself, because that just restarts the game kind of sometimes. So,
yeah,
that's no good. Anyways, do we have any surprises or discoveries? Those are all the neat moves.
Oh my goodness, we certainly did. I'm gonna do can I do them in reverse of how you have them here?
Oh yeah, sure.
Because we mentioned that there were some fights that we kind of took out. But this one caught my attention just because I was looking closer at it. It's Rivals Duel. 3 and a red, and it's a sorcery that says choose 2 target creatures that share no creature types. Those creatures fight each other. But notice they don't say that one of them has to be a creature you control, one of them has to be a creature you don't control. You can pick 2 creatures from 2 opponents, could be the same opponent, could be 2 different opponents, and I bet you can engineer a pair of fights that eliminates both creatures. They can't share a creature type, so it might not always work where you want it to, but I suspect you can pull that off 9 times out of 10 or more.
I think you're going to run into that creature type thing stopping you more often than that. Not super often, but I think more than 10% of the time. I think you're going to see that probably like a quarter of the time, I'd say.
Okay.
Anyway, because like just because there are a lot more humans than you give it credit for, and there's a lot more zombies and wizards and things like these days. You know what I mean? But like it is amongst different players too, so I think that you are going to be pretty fine most of the time. Yeah. But also you have to look for those like. You know, the power toughness needs to make sense, right? It needs to be able to kill each other, hopefully, for this to be good.
If we do have a damage doubler...
Yeah, in a pinch, also, the damage doubler will help. And in a pinch, you can even target one of your own creatures and prevent the damage that thing will do back to it. You know what I mean? Yep. So you've got that option, too, which I like.
And this could be a way to get, like if your Earthquake isn't quite big enough to finish someone, you can, like, get the first part of the damage with that, and then the Earthquake finishes them off.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's a 4-mana sorcery that like, probably kills at least one thing. Hopefully it kills 2 things. Like it's not amazing, but I think in this deck it's kind of neat just because we have that special ability from Tajic here.
It's so rare to find this effect, so I thought it was a neat discovery.
Yeah, it is. And another one which is weird, it's just a weird word also. It's inviolability. It's a 1 and a white aura, and you enchant a creature, and it says prevent all damage that would be dealt to enchanted creature. So, you know, very good in our deck here in that, you know, we're going to put this on Tajic, hopefully, and none of the damage. So he can even get into combat and it's fine. Obviously, this doesn't protect him from being targeted by kill spells and exile and things like that. But in this deck, it's worth it just to be able to do this to something. And I think it's quite good. Put this on a Palisade Giant if that's all the only thing you have out. And all of a sudden, you can't be hurt at all. But just like a kind of a valuable card in certain decks here, and certainly good in this one that we've never heard of or seen. It's weird. Marcadian Mask has a couple of weird cards like that. There's also another one that like you tap. It's a creature that taps and it like target creature becomes blocked. So it's
but it does. Yeah.
But like it doesn't block it. That creature's now
blocked it.
So like something that's unblockable won't hit you. But if something has trample, it still will hit you. It's interesting. Yeah. Interesting
That's
card.
Weird.
Yeah, it is. It is weird. But yeah, they're also in Marcadian Masks. Anyways, let's take a look at the budget report.
This is where we take all the cards and we fling a ton of fire at them, but none of ours will be destroyed and all of yours will.
Oh, suck it. Too bad for you.
Sorry, magic cards.
Sorry. That's Tajic talking. That's how he talks.
That's
sorry.
How he talks? I'm the Boros Maze Runner.
Ooh, you like my sword's on fire. It shoots fire at the side. Blue fire.
I engineered it myself.
Ooh. Turns out, massive dweeb.
Yeah, but you know, dude measures his macros accurately.
Yes, he knows.
Science.
Yeah, knows that stuff. Very, very smart guy.
Yeah.
Good with engineering. Okay, budget report for this one. As you know, we're no longer sticking to the hard budget of $50 on the show, but we still like to keep it as cheap as possible. And this one turned out to be just under it's actually less than this. I think what you have here. I think it's like $84.
Okay.
So it's about
that includes Tajic, I think.
No, mine was like 81 before Tajic or 80
anyway,
before Tajic.
I mean,
either way,
these prices are estimates. You're not going to be able to buy this from one card store for this exact price anyway.
Yeah, so
it's just like
it's in that range. It's less than $100. And the new thing we're doing here is like half the value of the cards is made up in how many cards. Like that's a important like kind of metric to know how like what kind of cuts you can make when you're trying to put this deck together. Well, half the value of this deck is made up in like eight or 9 cards, right? So you can make just a few cuts and then just really slash the budget down on this if you wanted to get down to around, $50, $60 or whatever. Yeah. Let's talk about that first most expensive card there.
Most expensive card, Repercussion. 1 red for an enchantment. Whenever a creature is dealt damage, Repercussion deals that much damage to that creature's controller. That card is $11, and in this deck, this could arguably one of the 3 stars of the deck because Tajic prevents that damage, right? So our creatures will not be taking damages from a big earthquake, but our opponent's creatures will, and then each of those creatures will do that damage back to their owner again. Yeah. So you could earthquake for 4 and kill anyone with 5 creatures on the board.
God forbid they have tokens or something, right? It's over for them.
If they got a dozen tokens, earthquake for 3, you're dead.
And it's not impossible to drop Repercussion and then play something like Wildfire, right? To do that 4 damage. That's a 9 mana play, but that's not crazy near the at the end of the game. And that, especially at that stage in the game, is probably enough to kill someone depending on what their board looks like. So Repercussion, $11 is expensive but very good, and I think you probably want to keep it in the deck. Next we have Darksteel Plate coming in at around $5. Mentioned this is a great way to protect Tajic. I think Indestructible is just kind of covers most of your bases here. Obviously doesn't protect against exile, but it's still very difficult to deal with. So I think you want to keep your Darksteel Plate. This is a great card.
Yeah, third most expensive card at about $5 too, just under, is Firesong and Sunspeaker. This is the Buy a Box promo from Dominaria. 4 red-white for a legendary Minotaur Cleric. 4/6. Red instant and sorcery spells you control have lifelink. And whenever a white instant or sorcery spell causes you to gain life, Firesong and Sunspeaker deals 3 damage to target creature or player. I think we have 1 white instant that could possibly do damage.
Really?
It's Boros Charm, but oh no, because you
no, it's only gain life. Yeah.
But it's really that first part. So all of our earthquakes, all of those things, all of those wildfires, they now all have lifelink. So we don't have to worry as much about us taking damage because it will also gain us that life. I'd have to really look at the rules to see if that number is big enough to also kill us. Is there a moment when we're dead? I think not. I think state-based actions won't be checked until we lose the life, go below 0, but then the life gains us the life, we're back above 0. Then state-based actions are checked, and we're still alive.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, this is one of the early rules I had to look up in Magic is dealing damage to something while something deals damage to you, but your thing has lifelink. And it would be enough to kill you. It all happens at the same time, so you actually gain the life at the same time as the damage. So you're fine, you don't die. So
I think the game saw the life totals go up and down, but state-based actions never checked for death until the whole thing was done.
Yeah, I think that's how it works too. And correct us if we're wrong, but I'm pretty sure we're right on this one actually. Firesong Sunspeaker. I mean, just this one is you actually find a lot, probably a decent amount of overlap between the episode we did Firesong and Sunspeaker and this one. A lot of X spells. Neheb is in this deck and stuff like that. But Firesong and Sunspeaker, great card, definitely. I wouldn't call it crazy important or anything, but so if you're looking to slash $5, you could maybe cut these guys. But actually, I like this card a lot in this deck. It's very strong.
Maybe you have one because you bought a box of Dominaria.
Yeah, sure. I kind of wish I did at this point. That I just bought a box because now I want this and I want a box of Dominaria. Okay, well, yeah, there you go. That's those are the top 3 most expensive cards in the deck. But let's take a look at the 3 stars, the real all stars, the shiners. Which one which one's really do what you want to do? Yeah. Really help out.
Number 3, Gisela, Blade of Gold Knight. 4 red, white, legendary angel, 5/5, flying first strike. If a source would deal damage to an opponent or permanent an opponent controls, that source deals double. If a source would deal damage to you, prevent half of it. Round it up. So all our earthquakes do double to our opponents and half to us. This is the ultimate damage doubler because it also halves your damage. Gisela's amazing.
Yeah, Gisela does everything you want to do. She's expensive, but this is basically a win condition with any of your damage spells as well. So she's then you can really just fantastic.
You can drop Gisela and just swing with the team, and that's almost always works.
Yeah, exactly, absolutely, because it's just gonna prevents so much damage to your stuff.
Yeah,
even if it is combat damage, she's great. Next, we have Protector of the Crown, number 2 star. Protector of the Crown is 5 and a white for a 2/5 giant soldier. When it enters the battlefield, you become the monarch, something we desperately need in Boros. We want to draw cards. And and all the damage that would be dealt to you is dealt to Protector of the Crown instead. So this is Palisade Giant, a little smaller because it's a 2/5. Palisade Giant's a 2/7, I think. But has that monarch ability is just so good. Protector of the Crown, because of that, gets vaulted to that number 2 spot.
Yep. And number 1 star of the deck, as hinted, Repercussion. That just ends games all by itself. No question, that's number 1 star.
Well, not all by itself. You still need one of the damage spells, but yes.
Yes. Yeah, it amps up your strategy from do some things to do everything.
And technically against a deck that has no creatures, Repercussion does nothing. But
that's true.
Yeah, but just the fact that most people will run at least a few creatures. That's the thing. You don't even need that many. Like 3 or 4 creatures can be enough to deal a crazy amount of damage with this deck. So
you know what's a neat move that I just thought of?
What's that?
Guess what? Your opponent doesn't have creatures? Well, then you can have this humble defector, and now I'll Earthquake for a
That is a neat move, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, that's crazy. Especially with a damage doubler, like you're looking at a lot of face damage with this deck. So, and that's it. That's everything. That's what you want to do. These damage-based decks, I said earlier before we were recording, but I've been looking at building one of these, and I thought maybe I was going to build my old Mogus deck. I was looking at Firesong and Sunspeaker. This is like an interesting mix between the two, kind of. And it doesn't have black, obviously, but it's doing it's dealing a lot of damage, which on one hand is like not the most interactive thing to do in Magic and in Commander, but it's still really fun. And I don't know. I want to build one of these decks. I wonder if it'll be this one. I feel like I want it to be this one.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. These
do it.
These can make for quick games. So there's an old episode we have called A Quick Game. And sometimes you just want to get out there and power out a bunch of damage. This is a deck that can definitely do that. I wouldn't say it's particularly fast. It can happen all in a matter of a turn or two. But there's a lot of 7 mana spells in this deck and a lot of 6 mana spells. So
there are. Yeah, there are. Yeah,
the curve's pretty high here.
We didn't talk about it, but the curve's pretty high, but we also have a lot of cheap mana creatures because we're in Boros and we need the help, little gold mirror, for example. Tajic can mentor onto those. You can attack, and so now you're hitting with a 2/2 and a 3/2, 3 of it commander damage, 5 damage, although small at first. You can get that out on turn 3 and just okay, that's a significant amount of damage very early. Yeah.
It's weird to me that Tajic prevents non-combat damage because it feels to me like he, as a character, his whole thing is okay, I'm the mentor, I'm the best warrior here, so when we go into battle, I will make you bigger, and also I will protect you in battle. So it almost feels like it should be just combat damage that it prevents, But from a commander standpoint though, and from just a game thing, I'm just happy that it does what it does. I think it's actually really cool that it stops non-combat damage. You don't see that ability ever, really.
Whoever's designing is really doing good work with Boros. I feel like we've recently been given a few options to do something a little bit different. Boros is they're branching out. They're growing up a bit. I love it.
Yeah, definitely. And you know what? I will just mention again before we leave, Nehab is very good in this deck as well.
Yep.
We didn't feature it as as a card anywhere but it's a pretty neat move to just deal all this damage and then have a bunch of mana to deal even more damage, which that card's great. If you don't have a Nehab, you should go get one. They're very good. Great. Yeah. Well, that's it for this week.
All right.
Very fun deck.
Everybody.
Always happy to brew around Boros and make it be something other than swing and attack, and that's it. Okay. Bye.
Bye. Boom. Ba-ba-ba-ba-boom. Big thanks to all our patrons who make these episodes possible.
Yeah, and if you want to check out more comedy videos, check out our Brews News playlist.
Make sure you follow us on Twitch TV to see when we play live.
If you want to chat with us, head over to Twitter. We're @CommandersBrew.
And please hit subscribe to ding the bell and find out when we got new stuff coming out.
See you next time.
Bye.